A room of stone. A woman's hands lift you into the air and turn you toward an old man sitting in the dark. It's 570 BC out there, and this is not your father. He is the man deciding if you get to live. If your legs look weak, this ends before it starts. So, congratulations. You're born a Spartan. You pictured abs, a cape, maybe a pile of legendary feats by age 20. Instead, someday, 30 kilos of bronze on your back. And right now, an old man staring at your ribs like he's buying meat. This isn't the movie. The real Sparta has a lot less heroism and a lot more rules. Here's the number nobody puts in the poster. About 1 in 3 babies born in Greece this year won't see age 5. You don't know that yet. You're still being examined. The old man, an ephor, one of Sparta's top officials, presses your legs, checks your spine, watches how you cry. Torches, stone benches, a dozen old men who have done this 1,000 times before. None of them smile. Then comes the wine. They bathe newborns in it, not water, wine, because a sickly baby is supposed to seizure from the strength of it, and a strong one just cries. You cry. Good. You're in. Your nurse won't swaddle you. She won't rock you every time you cry either. Spartan nurses are famous across Greece for exactly this, for building tough babies, not comfortable ones. You'll thank her later. That's the first thing you learn about Sparta. You belong to it before you belong to your own family. Legend says weak babies got left on a mountainside to die. Modern archaeologists actually dug up that mountainside. There were bones there, but luckily, not baby ones. Either way, you passed your test. You get to stay. For now, you're just hungry, like every baby everywhere. Surviving birth is just the beginning. Sparta will keep testing you for years to come. So where exactly did you end up? Sparta lies in Laconia, in the southeast of the Peloponnese Peninsula, in the valley of the Eurotas River, wedged between 2 mountain ranges, Thyreatis and Parnon. The mountains themselves were your walls. And having conquered neighboring Messenia, Sparta held the largest territory of any Greek city-state, about 8,500 square kilometers, nearly a third of the entire peninsula. And despite that, the city is just 4 plain villages that grew together on the plain, with no wall at all. Here's the first thing that breaks the movie image. Most of the people around you in Sparta aren't Spartans. These are the helots, an entire enslaved population, the conquered people of Messenia who work the land so you never have to. You, a Spartan citizen, are a tiny minority. Helots outnumber you probably by about 10 to 1. And how many of you real Spartans actually are there? At its very peak, when Sparta thundered across all of Greece, there were only about 8,000 full citizen warriors. Let's walk through your city, though city is a big word here. Walk down the main street. You won't see a single grand temple or marble column. Here's the agora, a plain square where the men gather. Next to it, the syssitia, the communal mess halls. Here you eat every day, not at home with family, but at a long table with other warriors, the same black broth for your whole life. Further on, open training and wrestling grounds. The heart of the city, more important than any palace. On the outskirts, the altar of Artemis, where you'll be whipped soon enough. And beyond the city, as far as the eye can see, barley fields and olive groves worked by helots. That's all of Sparta. Plain houses, a barracks, a mess hall, a training ground, and a temple. You are 7, and they take you. Not metaphorically. A state official walks into your house and you leave with him, into a group of other 7-year-olds called a herd. This is the agoge, Sparta's entire education system, and it is not built to make you comfortable. You sleep in the barracks on reeds you pull from the riverbank yourself. No mattress. They also don't feed you enough, on purpose. The idea is that hunger makes you resourceful, so stealing food is basically encouraged. Getting caught is the actual crime. There's a story, maybe true, maybe a lesson dressed up as history, about a boy who stole a fox cub and hid it under his cloak. When an officer stopped to talk to him, the boy stood still while the fox tore into his stomach, rather than let it squirm and give him away. He died without making a sound. True or not, that's the lesson. Pain is manageable. Appearing weak is not. Your friend once managed to steal a whole barley flatbread and gives you half. Today, the two of you have a real feast. You learn to read a little, do some math, and memorize huge chunks of Homer. The Iliad mostly, because a story about war is basically a training manual here. You also learn to talk less. Long speeches get mocked. Short, sharp answers get respected. This region is called Laconia. That's where the word laconic comes from. Then comes your first real test, a run through the foothills of Thyreatis, a distance none of you has ever run before, under a blazing sun with no water until the finish. Some collapse long before the end. That shouldn't concern you. The idea is to raise children who don't complain. You have to become an actual master of not complaining. And the food. Forget lamb on a spit. The famous Spartan dish is black broth, pork boiled in its own blood with vinegar and salt. Alongside it, a hard barley flatbread. A visitor from another Greek city tasted this broth once and said he finally understood why Spartans aren't afraid of death. Nights in the herd, an older boy tells you about the gods. Apollo, who demands discipline. Ares, who is basically the patron saint of what you're training for. For now, though, you're just a kid by a fire, half listening, mostly cold, holding a shield too small for your arm. The stories are supposed to prepare you. Nothing really prepares you. You just carry the stories until you need them. You are 20 now, one wool cloak and a plain tunic. That's your entire wardrobe for the year. Hot months, cold months, doesn't matter. Shoes, there are none. Your feet toughen up or they don't. Either way, you're walking on rocks barefoot by winter. Here's the myth people believe, thanks to a certain movie. Oiled abs, red capes on bare skin. Reality, full bronze armor, a helmet that muffles half of what you hear. Nobody's fighting anything important half naked. That gets you killed in the first 5 seconds. The shield is round, roughly a yard across, wood covered in bronze, and weighs about 7 kilograms. You don't hold it by a normal handle at the edge. You strap your forearm through a bronze band in the center, then grip a handle near the rim. That means it really only protects your left side, and half of the man standing to your right. Which is exactly why breaking the Spartan phalanx isn't just inconvenient. It leaves your neighbor exposed. Your main weapon is a spear almost 3 meters long, ash wood, an iron head, and a bronze spike on the other end. That spike isn't decoration. If the shaft snaps, the butt end becomes a second weapon. When even that fails, there's a short sword, about 60 centimeters, your last argument when everything else is gone. Add it all up: helmet, cuirass, greaves, shield, spear, sword, and you're carrying something like 25 kilograms, maybe more. You wear all of it not for an hour, but for the whole battle. In the heat, on foot, over rocks. One thing the movies got almost right though, the hair. Free Spartan men grow their hair long. It's basically a uniform, a way of saying, I am not a slave and not a servant. Helots don't get that option. So you grow yours out and you'll keep growing it your whole life. One day, right before the biggest fight of your life, you'll sit calmly combing it, but that's years away. Let's talk about money. Sparta hated it, and there was a specific design behind that. While other Greek cities traded in gold and silver coins, Sparta used iron bars, heavy, worth almost nothing, and deliberately unusable. Getting rich is impossible. Bribing someone easily is impossible. And hiding your wealth is definitely impossible. It won't fit under your bed. The whole point was to kill greed and luxury, keeping every citizen focused on the state and the spear, not on profit. A full Spartan citizen wasn't supposed to engage in trade or farming at all. That's what the perioikoi were for, free craftsmen and traders. Your job is to be a warrior, always. That's the entire career.
You're not taught to calculate profit or to haggle.
A Spartan caught loving money was despised more than a coward. You're 24 now, and you're chosen as one of the 300 of Sparta's best champions, picked to settle a border dispute over the Thyreatis plain, not through war, but through single combat. 300 against 300, while the rest of both armies stay far from the battlefield. At dawn, both phalanxes line up against each other on the open field. This is no longer 300 separate warriors. It's one organism of bronze, wood, and muscle. The hoplites form tight ranks, 8 deep. Each man stands shoulder to shoulder with his neighbor. There's almost no gap between men, the line solid as a wall. That same round shield that covers your left side also covers the right half of your comrade to the left. The phalanx holds only as long as everyone stays in place. The phalanxes advance slowly, in step, to the sound of a flute, so as not to break the rhythm or tear the line. Long spears jut out from behind the shields. The first 2 rows lower their points forward, and the enemy faces a bristle of iron. The rear ranks rest their spears on the shoulders of the men in front and physically push forward, adding weight to the shove. By midday, the formation isn't a formation anymore, just dozens of scattered pairs fighting one-on-one among the bodies. You no longer know who's winning. You fight the Argives for hours. The sun climbs, then starts to fall, and you're still standing. None of you is waiting for help, and none of you is planning to run. This isn't the legendary battle you've seen in the movies. There was no brave King Leonidas beside you. He hadn't even been born yet. There was just a number, 300. The friend who trained next to you since you were 7. The one who once let you have the last piece of bread. The one whose shield you used to spar against with wooden swords. Falls sometime in the afternoon, somewhere in the chaos. You don't even reach him in time. By evening, of the 300 Spartans, only one is still standing. And you're lying among hundreds of bodies, barely aware of what's happened, when you suddenly hear your name, someone from your unit, also alive, walking toward you across the field. Then another. The 2 Argives who survived on their side, meanwhile, have already run back to report a victory. They didn't stay to see who else would still get up off the field. You did. When the 3 of you return to Sparta's main army, waiting nearby, you, the survivors, are welcomed as heroes. They give you water, take the weapons out of your hands, embrace you. You carry your friend's shield home yourself. His mother asked for it. You hand it to her without a single word. There isn't one that fits. Years pass. You are old now. The boy who once got dunked in wine as a baby has gray hair and a limp from an old wound. You still have your own shield hanging by the door. Your grandson runs his hand over the scratches on it sometimes, the same way you used to touch your training shield as a boy. He asks if you were scared back then. You tell him the truth. You weren't afraid because you were prepared. Somewhere in old texts, this story still lies, about a field full of bodies and one dispute over a strip of land, settled not by war, but by single combat. And 2,500 years from now, people who've never held a spear, never eaten black broth, never worn one cloak through an entire winter, may never even hear the name Thyreatis. They just know the words, "Come back with your shield or on it." Your grandson hangs the shield back on its hook. Lucky for you, watching this, you get to just close the video and go back to a life where nobody ever checked if your legs were strong enough to let you live.